You're pathetic. This ain't your world anymore." The words cut like a whip across the otherwise quiet sidewalk outside the community library. A backpack thudded to the ground. A cane spun across the concrete and clattered beneath a bench. On his knees, struggling to rise, was an elderly man in an olive-green jacket, dust on his sleeves, one palm scraped and reddening, breath held tight in his chest. His name was Adam Corbett. He was 79, a retired Master Sergeant of the United States Marine Corps. He said nothing, not as the teenager stood over him, fists clenched, earbuds dangling, hoodie half-zipped in the sharp morning air. Not as people passed by and almost looked, but didn't. Not even when the boy leaned down and hissed, "Move it, old man. Nobody cares about your little medals." A breeze blew a leaf across the sidewalk. A child's voice called distantly for a parent. A car door slammed 2 blocks away. Life kept moving, but Adam didn't. He stayed down, steadying himself against the sidewalk with one trembling hand. The other reached, slow, deliberate, for the cap that had fallen from his head and now lay upside down near the gutter. His breathing was shallow, not from fear, not from pain, from something else. A woman in a passing coat paused, watched, then looked away. The teenager scoffed, pacing in a tight circle like a lion in a cage. He cracked his knuckles and muttered under his breath, words not meant for decency. That's when the wind shifted. Footsteps echoed from around the corner. Boots, not sneakers, not rushed, but firm. Heavy soles on pavement. A rhythm you didn't forget if you'd ever marched to a cadence, if you'd ever given an order that meant someone lived or didn't. Someone in the distance whispered, just loud enough for it to be real. "Isn't that Adam from the Veterans of Foreign Wars Hall?" The teen didn't hear it, but Adam did. And though he didn't lift his head yet, something in his spine began to straighten. Not defiance, but memory, the kind of stillness that comes before thunder. The boots drew closer. 1 second, 2, 3. If you believe every veteran deserves respect, subscribe, because every view helps this message reach those who need it most. Earlier that day, the alarm clock didn't ring. It hadn't in years. At 79, Adam Corbett didn't need reminders to wake before sunrise. His bones did that job well enough. He rose from bed with a practiced slowness. Not weakness, but ritual. The rhythm of a man who had known too many mornings that began in mud or dust or blood. The small bedroom was neat, corners sharp, drawers closed, blinds angled just so. On the dresser sat a ceramic cup filled with change, a wristwatch that no longer ticked, and a photograph of a woman in a soft blue dress, forever smiling from 1964. He moved through the house like a quiet engine, every step purposeful, every breath measured. The kitchen light buzzed faintly as he flicked it on. Eggs, toast, black coffee, no sugar, no cream, just the routine of simplicity. His hands, though calloused and veined, moved steadily over the stove. He cracked each egg with care, as though even breakfast demanded precision. While the bread browned in the toaster, he opened the back door to let in the morning air. The breeze carried the scent of damp concrete and early traffic, a Monday scent, busy and unbothered. In the corner of the porch, nestled in a clay pot, the tomato plant waited. He bent to water it slowly, muttering, "Morning, Dolores," as he always did. The living room was small but lived in, a worn recliner near the window, a folded flag in a walnut case on the mantel. Above it hung a sepia-toned portrait of a platoon, young faces frozen in time, dust on their boots, pride in their postures. Beneath the photo sat a wooden box, its brass latch dulled by years. Adam opened it with both hands, not rushing. Inside were his medals, campaign ribbons, a bronze star, a silver star, and smaller mementos. A letter from a fellow Marine's daughter, a map with marks fading into yellow, a bullet fragment still blackened with carbon. He studied each piece not as a trophy, but as a ledger of cost. He chose his clothes the way a craftsman selects tools, with intention. A freshly ironed shirt, dark trousers, his Marine Corps lapel pin, and an old service jacket. Its green faded, but the seams still strong. He polished his shoes, then ran a soft cloth over the edges of his cane. Last, he tucked a folded speech into the inside pocket of his jacket, handwritten, crossouts and all, prepared for his annual reading at the library's Veterans Read Aloud Day. At the bus stop, he stood quietly among the restless, teenagers scrolling through phones, a woman pacing with her coffee, a man in a suit muttering into an earpiece. Adam held his cane like a staff and waited. When the bus arrived, he stepped on slowly, nodding at the driver. He moved toward an empty seat and eased down, steadying himself with one hand. Across from him, a boy no older than 16 stared, earbud dangling, a smirk creeping across his lips. "Shouldn't you be in a home?" the boy muttered, just loud enough. Adam didn't answer. He simply turned his gaze to the window, where sunlight flared off the tops of parked cars and children raced toward the crosswalks. The boy laughed once under his breath and returned to his phone. The ride continued in silence. At the cafe near the library, Adam waited in line behind a group of students ordering smoothies and breakfast sandwiches. When it was his turn, the cashier turned away mid-step to greet another customer who had just entered. Adam waited. When she finally took his order, she didn't meet his eyes. Coffee in hand, he sat at a bench outside the library, speech in his lap, waiting for the clock to turn. He watched the sidewalk. Dogs tugging leashes, buses sighing at the corner, children chattering around stacks of returned books. A man in a yellow vest walked past, glanced at Adam's jacket, and gave him a nod, the kind only men who've served know how to give. At 10 o'clock sharp, Adam stood, straightened his collar, and walked to the front steps. But something was wrong. No chairs set up, no podium, no banner like years before. He checked the bulletin board inside. No listing, no mention of his reading. Just a flyer about community gardening and a notice for Teen Technology Workshop, Conference Room A. He walked slowly back outside, fingers curling slightly around the paper in his jacket. And then, from the corner of his eye, a boy in a hoodie approached too fast, earbuds swinging, mouth moving, hands too quick. And Adam, before he could even speak or be heard, felt the world tilt. The concrete rushed up. His cane spun away. His medals jostled in his jacket. And the sound of a young voice, too sharp, too sure, broke through the noise of morning. "You're pathetic. Move it." The world did not stop when Adam Corbett hit the pavement. The wind carried on. Traffic murmured by. A woman glanced up from her phone, hesitated, and walked faster. The boy standing over him was young, tall enough to throw a shadow, too old to be unaware of the harm he'd caused, but still boyish in the way he leaned forward as if dominance was the same thing as power. "I said move faster next time, all right?" the teen barked, voice cracking slightly as anger tangled with insecurity. His earbuds dangled like lifelines that hadn't connected. "You're in the middle of the sidewalk like you own it." Adam's cap lay a few feet away, lifted slightly by a gust of air, its bill curling upward toward the sky. He reached toward it with slow fingers, scraping his knuckles on the concrete as he moved. His other hand trembled beneath his weight, palm now lined with a shallow trail of blood where the skin had split. His breath came in shallow rhythms, not panicked, but controlled, as though each inhale had to pass through years of practiced restraint. Someone gasped. A young mother on the far side of the steps pulled her toddler closer by the wrist, her eyes flicking between the boy and the man on the ground. She didn't speak. No one did. "Look at this," the teen muttered, pacing again. His foot knocked into Adam's cane, sending it skittering beneath a bench. "This isn't 1945 anymore, old man. You don't get the sidewalk just because you've got a jacket and a bad back." Adam finally lifted his head, eyes narrowed against the light. His voice, when it came, was nearly inaudible. "I was headed to the library." The boy laughed once, sharp, empty. "Yeah? You forget your walker too?" The noise of the city returned in fragments, a distant honk, the squeak of bicycle brakes, a delivery truck's rumbling pause. But here, on this small square of sidewalk, time had compressed into something tight and uneasy. The library door opened behind them, and a clerk stepped halfway out. She looked at the scene, Adam on the ground, the boy above him, then slowly backed inside without a word. The door shut gently behind her. From a nearby bench, a man in a faded sweatshirt stood up. He was middle-aged, maybe older, a newspaper still in his hands. "Hey," he said, not loud but firm. "Leave him alone." The teen turned, shoulders squaring. "You got something to say?" The man hesitated, then sat down again. "Just show some respect." "Respect?" the boy sneered, gesturing down at Adam. "For what? A guy who can't even stand?" Adam had begun to rise now, slowly, knees stiff, his breathing tighter. He braced one hand against the stone edge of the planter nearby, struggling upright without his cane. As he reached into his coat to steady the inner pocket, something slipped. A soft sound, almost unnoticed, as a worn leather case dropped to the pavement and fell open. It wasn't money. It wasn't ID. Inside, laid neatly in rows, were military medals, a bronze star, a purple heart, 2 campaign ribbons, and a silver star, the kind not awarded lightly. Photos spilled with them. Black and white snapshots of young men in fatigues, a dog tag resting on sand, a tattered map folded too many times. The teen stared, then snorted. "You carry that around to feel important or something?" Adam didn't reply. He knelt, painfully, to gather the items, his hand pausing briefly over the silver star. The sun caught the edge of it just right, sending a sharp glint across the sidewalk. A murmur stirred from the people now watching. Not loud, not angry, just aware. From around the corner, a new sound entered the scene. Not traffic, not footsteps. Boots, authoritative, steady. The kind of stride that came with command. And for the first time, the boy looked uncertain. The gleam of the silver star in the sunlight held for a beat longer than seemed natural. Not merely a reflection, but a trigger. The sidewalk faded. The voices around him blurred. The cold edge of the metal pressed against Adam's fingers like it always had. Not as a trophy, but a tether. And just like that, he was there again. The heat came first. A thick, wet heat that clung to every surface, every breath. It smelled of diesel and gunpowder, of soaked canvas, and blood gone stale in the sun. The rice paddies of Da Nang stretched out in uneven grids, patches of water glinting between smoldering trees. Helicopters circled in the sky like steel wasps, blades chopping the air, too distant to hear the screaming below. He was 25, strong, fast, and tired in a way that didn't touch the body, only the soul. Gunfire cracked in the distance, then closer. They had been ambushed 3 clicks north of the riverbank, pinned in a village that barely stood anymore. Bamboo huts splintered into floating debris. Smoke laced with ash drifted between the reeds. Screams rose and fell like waves breaking in fog. Corporal Jensen was down, shot through the thigh. Corporal Miller was missing. 2 others huddled behind a half-collapsed wall, trading fire with enemies they couldn't see. Adam crouched low in the water, chest submerged, his rifle cradled against his shoulder, teeth grit against the sting of swamp and shrapnel. He gave hand signals, no time for speech. His boots were full of mud. His ears rang with artillery. His heart kept a rhythm no metronome could mimic. They were supposed to wait, for airlift, for orders, for someone to say go. He didn't. Adam moved. He dragged Jensen through the water with one arm, muzzle scanning the trees. The wounded man cried out, more in shock than pain, as leeches clung to his leg, and the blood clouded the water behind them. Adam didn't look back. He didn't stop, not even when a mortar dropped close enough to lift him clear out of the trench and into the side of a broken hut. The world reeled sideways. His shoulder screamed. His side was warm, wet, but he crawled. Through bamboo, through fire. He found Miller face down near the supply crate, unconscious, lifted him with both arms, slung him across his back like a sack of grain, his legs barely working. He limped, stumbled, half walked, half swam toward the evac point. And then, the final moment. A boy, barely 18, Private Ramos, stuck behind a crumbled fishing boat, frozen in fear. Eyes too wide, breathing too fast. His rifle long since dropped. Adam saw it all in an instant. The incoming fire, the body that wouldn't move. The kid who was going to die in 3 seconds if nobody did anything. So he went back. Searing pain in his leg now, each step like ice cracking beneath him. But he reached Ramos, tackled him flat, shielded him with his own frame as another round hit the hull behind them. "I'm not letting you go out alone," Adam whispered. He passed Ramos his last morphine shot, hand shaking. "Hold on, kid." The sky above shimmered with the low whir of inbound helicopters. The flash ended as fast as it had begun. The sidewalk returned, hard, cold, too bright. The voices still murmured. The teen still stood over him, expression unreadable now. And Adam Corbett, still kneeling, gently closed the metal case, his fingers lingering on the edge. His breath came deep this time, not with pain, but with memory, and the knowledge that everything that had happened back there, in the mud, the smoke, the screams, still lived here, in the way he rose, in the way he said nothing, in the way he never reached for pity, but carried it all like a pack he would never put down. The sound of boots striking pavement grew louder, not rushed, not heavy, but deliberate. A rhythm like punctuation. The kind of walk that said, without words, "I see what's happening, and I intend to address it." The teenager looked up, eyes narrowing as a figure turned the corner. Broad shoulders, navy uniform, dark blue tie tight at the collar, a silver badge pinned above the heart. Police Chief Daniel Hartley had walked that beat for 20 years, though not always in uniform. His father had worn the badge before him. His uncle had served in Korea, and he knew Adam Corbett. Everyone in this town did, or should have. He said nothing at first, just scanned the scene with a gaze that made time slow. His eyes landed on Adam, who was now fully upright, standing without his cane, one hand holding the closed metal case against his chest. A smear of blood darkened his palm. A small tremor ran through his arm, though whether from age or memory, it was hard to tell. "What's going on here?" Hartley asked, voice low and even. The teen scoffed. He tried to sound bigger than he was. "He got in my way. It's not a big deal." The chief's eyes didn't move. He stepped forward, past the boy, toward Adam, kneeled down, picked up the cap that still lay near the gutter. With both hands, slow, careful, he dusted it off and extended it toward Adam without saying a word. Adam took it gently, nodded. Still, not a word spoken between them. Then Hartley rose and turned, faced the boy. "You know who this is?" he asked, not unkindly, but with a weight that didn't invite carelessness. The teen shrugged, still trying to stand tall. "Some old dude with stories." Chief Hartley tilted his head slightly, like he was trying to remember how best to teach a lesson without raising his voice. His hands folded behind his back. "That man," he said, "dragged 2 of my uncle's men out of a river in Da Nang under mortar fire. My uncle told me that story every 4th of July. Said if it weren't for Sergeant Corbett, I wouldn't be here." The boy shifted. The weight of the crowd was beginning to press in now, not as anger, but attention. People had drawn closer. The woman with the toddler now stood still. The man with the newspaper had folded it in his hands. The library clerk, halfway behind the glass door, lingered this time. Hartley continued. "When I was 12, there was a flood down by River Street. A kid fell through the ice. You know who jumped in before anyone else? He didn't wait for an answer. Adam Corbett broke 2 ribs pulling that boy out. That boy's a fire chief now. Runs the same station his father once did." The teen said nothing. A little girl, barely 7, stepped out from behind her mother's legs. She held something small in her hand. Adam's cane. She had picked it up from beneath the bench without being asked. Carried it like a relic. Offered it with both hands, arms trembling slightly. Adam looked down at her. His mouth softened. He took the cane, nodded once, and placed a hand gently on her shoulder for a moment before letting it drop. Chief Hartley turned his gaze slowly back to the teen. He didn't ask for thanks. He didn't ask for respect. But today, he's going to get both. The boy swallowed. His face was still, but his jaw clenched faintly. A flush of something, shame, maybe, crept beneath his collar. He didn't speak again. The people gathered didn't cheer. They didn't need to. But their presence alone became its own kind of judgment. Their silence, heavy with knowing. Their eyes, now fixed not on a scuffle but on a reckoning. The library door opened again. This time, a staff member stepped out, holding a microphone. She glanced at Adam, then at the chief. "If Mr. Corbett is still willing," she said, voice a little unsure, "we'd be honored to hear his words." Adam's fingers brushed his coat pocket. The speech still rested there, folded neatly, not ruined, not forgotten. He looked toward Hartley. Hartley nodded. Adam exhaled once, steady now, and stepped forward. Adam stood at the edge of the steps, the folded paper in his hand feeling heavier than before. The words he had written days ago were still there. Same ink, same lines, but they now bore the weight of something larger. Not just a reading, not just tradition. They had become proof of presence, a reminder that memory, when honored, becomes legacy. The staff member handed him the microphone with both hands. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her eyes had changed, not just widened, but softened. Behind her, more people emerged from the library. A young man in a wheelchair, a woman holding a child, a group of high school students who had wandered in for a tech workshop and stayed, drawn by the shift in the air. Adam adjusted the paper, unfolding the creases with careful fingers. The crowd waited, not impatient, not expectant, just willing, ready. He looked out at them, then down at the first line. "I came here today," he began, voice low but steady, "to talk about sacrifice." The word lingered in the quiet like smoke after a match. "I was told it might be a small crowd," he continued. "Didn't matter. Some things are worth saying even if no one listens." A few heads nodded. "I wrote this speech because I thought it might matter to someone. A child, maybe, or a young man looking for a reason to stand up straighter. But now," he paused, glancing briefly at the teenager off to the side, who stood still as stone, hands in his pockets, eyes lowered. "Now I think it matters for all of us." He cleared his throat softly. "Sacrifice," he said again, "is not loud. It doesn't boast. It doesn't ask for parades. Sacrifice is crawling through mud with someone else's weight on your back. It's going in when your instinct says run. It's giving the best years of your life so others can have the freedom to waste theirs if they want to." There were no coughs in the audience, no rustling, just the breeze curling around the building's brick edges. "I've lost men I loved like brothers," Adam said, his voice catching just once. "I've seen flags folded too many times. I've stood by graves while bagpipes played, and I've answered the phone to hear another voice I'd never hear again." He looked down at the silver star, resting now in the breast pocket of his jacket. "But I've also seen a kid make it home because someone wouldn't leave him. I've seen generations rise because others didn't. And I've seen towns like this one, right here. Remember, even when they almost forgot." He looked up again. No paper now, just his eyes, just his truth. "So no, I don't carry these medals to feel important. I carry them because someone has to, because their names aren't on walls. They're in here." He tapped his chest once, softly. "And I won't let the world bury them with silence." He lowered the microphone. The crowd didn't erupt. There were no cheers, but one by one people moved. A woman wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. A man placed his hand over his heart. The girl who had returned the cane hugged her mother's leg a little tighter. The teen, still off to the side, took a half step forward, then stopped, unsure. Adam adjusted his cap. He didn't bow. He didn't smile. He simply stood, straight-backed, clear-eyed. and gave the crowd one more thing they didn't expect. A salute. Sharp, clean, full of memory. And in the space after, when no sound dared break the moment, a man near the back whispered, "God bless you, Sergeant." Adam lowered his hand, and for the first time in a very long time, he felt something he had not dared to expect. Seen, not as an old man in a jacket, but as the man he had always been. The crowd didn't scatter the way crowds often do. There was no rush to the exit, no mindless scroll back into routine. Instead, they lingered, a small constellation of strangers knit together by the stillness left behind in Adam Corbett's wake. Some stood in silence. Others formed quiet clusters, speaking in low tones as though afraid to disturb the air. The library staff exchanged glances that meant more than words. A few began to move chairs out from storage, belatedly setting up what should have already been there. Others brought water bottles, tissues, small gestures that suddenly mattered. The teenager stood at the edge of it all, his hands still jammed in his pockets. His gaze flicked from the scattered medals to the people around him, then to the man he had knocked down not 10 minutes ago. The boy said nothing, but he stayed. That, in itself, was something. Police Chief Daniel Hartley approached him calmly, not with handcuffs, not with a warning, just presence. The boy looked up, expecting scolding, maybe arrest. What he got was something else. "You're coming with me," Hartley said, not unkindly. The teen blinked. "Am I in trouble?" "You're going to spend the next 30 days at the Veterans Hall. You'll mop floors, stack chairs, listen to stories you don't understand yet. And maybe, if you're lucky, you'll come away knowing what it actually means to stand for something." The teen opened his mouth, as if to argue, but the words died in his throat. He gave a small nod. The story didn't end in that moment, but it rippled. Word of what had happened outside the library traveled quickly. Not in viral flashes, but in Sunday coffee conversations, school hallways, church steps, the kind of places where real news still matters. The town's local paper featured a small piece the next day, no byline, just a headline. "Old Soldier, New Lesson." Beneath it was a black and white photograph of Adam saluting, his shadow cast long on the library steps behind him. A week later, the library reinstated Veterans Read Aloud Day, not just as an event, but as a permanent annual fixture. They named it after Adam, the Adam Corbett Hour of Honor. A brass plaque was installed beside the library's front door, its engraving simple and clean. "In honor of Master Sergeant Adam Corbett, courage, service, and grace." The ceremony was small. Adam said little. But when asked if he would attend next year's reading, he simply replied, "If the tomatoes don't keep me too busy, I'll be there." The plaque wasn't flashy. It wasn't meant to be. But every morning since its installation, someone, not always the same person, left a single red carnation beneath it. No note, no card, just the flower, just the gesture. And across town, at the Veterans Hall, a mop squeaked across the tile floor every afternoon. The teen, whose name the newspaper never printed, cleaned without complaint. Some days, he sat and listened. Other days, he helped serve coffee. But always, he stayed. And on the last day of his time there, he stood up during the closing circle, voice soft and uneven, and said, "I didn't know, but now I do." Adam didn't ask for that moment, but someone told him about it. He nodded once, then went back to watering Dolores. The sun hung low over the rooftops, casting long shadows across the narrow front porch where Adam Corbett sat in his rocking chair, a chipped mug of tea cooling in his hand. He didn't rock. Not yet. He just sat still, watching the light spill across the tomato plant nestled in its clay pot beside him. Its leaves had darkened into full summer green, and the blossoms, 3 of them, had begun to turn their faces toward the evening. Dolores, he called the plant. He always had. He spoke to her less now, but not because he loved her less, only because somehow she seemed to listen better in silence. The air was cool in that rare, perfect way. Not quite breeze, not quite still. A dog barked in the distance, A basketball bounced faintly down the block, and a boy's laugh trailed behind the rhythm of scooter wheels skimming along the pavement. Life returned, as it always did, not forgetting, but continuing. The flag in Adam's yard fluttered once, lazily, catching the tail end of the wind. The pole creaked softly, and then held. He sipped his tea. It had gone lukewarm, but he didn't mind. The taste reminded him of mornings before deployments, quick, bitter, necessary. He placed the mug down and rested his hands on the worn arms of the chair. His knuckles had stopped shaking. The pain in his shoulder was manageable today. Even the scar on his side, the one that always ached when rain was near, felt quiet. No one had knocked on his door. No news crews. No calls for comment. But that was how it should be. The world didn't owe him a banner. It had already given him something more rare, understanding. The kind that doesn't come from speeches, but from seeing. Really seeing. Across the street, a young boy knelt on the sidewalk to tie his shoe. When he looked up, he caught Adam's eye. The boy paused, then lifted a hand in a small salute. He didn't smile. He didn't laugh. He just held it for a moment, then returned to his task and rolled away down the block. Adam closed his eyes briefly. The chair beneath him shifted slightly as he leaned back. The memory of boots in water, the boy in the reeds, the medals scattered on concrete. All of it was still there. But for the first time in a long time, it didn't weigh the same. The speech had been heard. The lesson had landed. And the name, not his name, but the meaning behind it, had been left standing, quiet and whole. The world had not changed completely, but it had changed enough, and that was more than he'd ever asked for. If stories like this resonate with your heart, like and subscribe for more untold moments of honor and kindness. Let us know where you are watching from, and if this moment brought back memories you carry with you. The best way to honor their memory is to keep listening. Click on the suggested video now, and we'll walk together through another untold chapter of courage and sacrifice.